Welcome aboard John Parsons from Azatrax Circuits and Signals. He can be found on www.azatrax.com, so that's azatrax.com, and also on Facebook. So welcome aboard, John. Thanks for taking time out from the family this evening to talk to us here at MRT, and I do apologise because this is take number 2.
Oh, quite all right, Daz. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what we'll do, I always like to get to know the modelers, sort of their rough history and all that, and you've kindly sent some quite lovely photos through, particularly, probably 2 to 3 years of age. So we'll start, I'll bring one of those photos up and we'll go from there, and we'll just quickly chat about your modelling history and how it's developed to Azatrax as it is today. So.
Well, this picture is me at age 4. That's an American Flyer train going around the floor of my bedroom. And the unusual looking structures next to the track there, those are crossing signals made with Tinker Toys. That was a wooden construction toy set back in those days. Yep. And my father helped me build those. You can actually swing the banjo piece of it back and forth like the real ones.
Sure.
For some reason, faithful representation of the real thing was important to me, and particularly railroad signals, even at a very early age.
Oh, lovely. Looks like you're having a lovely time there and very intense on that. What sort of locomotive, what size like that? Looks quite a large, like a 484 or something similar.
That was the 484 Northern locomotive.
Oh, lovely. Seems to be it's a common thread here. I've spoken to a lot of American gentlemen. It seems to be the institution, the American Flyer, by the looks of it. So to get the youth into the hobby. All right. So
it was very effective. A lot of children have enjoyed that train since then. I still have it.
Oh, lovely. So we move forward a number of years to a HO scale layout by the looks of it. So what can you tell us about this little beauty?
HO scale, built that while I was in high school. It's a figure 8 with 2 reversing tracks going through the middle and some other tracks on there. And I used that. That was my motivation to start learning electronics.
Sure.
I built an automatic control system that automated the reversing loops, the polarity, and the turnouts. And all the logic was done using relays.
Oh, wow. Okay. So obviously electronics is definitely in the blood well and truly by then. So
it's, model railroading got me started, and it became a career for me.
Oh, lovely. So talk us through, this was, I think you said before, in the 70s when you were in high school. So just to give it some sort of...
right, so this is one of the 3 circuit cards that was controlling that layout.
Right.
All of the automation for the reverse loops, for the 2 DC cab controls.
Sure.
And the parts were made from pieces I scrounged from electronic surplus stores. I grew up in the Los Angeles area, so there was a lot of that available. And the design of the train detectors came from Model Railroader magazine from designs they had published.
Right, I see. Okay. So that was like the full cab control and everything, and reverse looping, and as you spoke of before?
Yes.
Okay. I think we do have a picture of the reverse end of it. So
that's the back side. Back in those days, to make a printed circuit board took thousands and thousands of dollars. So
sure.
That's a surplus circuit card. All the copper I peeled off.
Yeah.
And did my wiring all with surplus telephone wire.
Yeah. Okay.
I still use that telephone wire for a lot of my projects.
Yeah. Okay. I do notice some of these back here. These are from telephone exchanges, aren't they? These relays through the middle here. Those relays.
Similar types, yes.
Yeah. All right, so we move forward quite a number of years and decades. This is obviously obviously we'll talk about this more, but this is the latest in the Azatrax arsenal, so to speak.
Right. You can say that the technology certainly has improved in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Or 50 years. My skills maybe have improved a bit also. This is for controlling up to 5 single or dual head signals at a double track control point.
Sure.
And all that switching logic takes place in that little black square.
In the middle.
right in
It's
the middle
incredible,
there.
isn't it? How far we've come with electronics, and I'm sure there's a point down the track that this module might even be half the size, maybe. Who knows?
Well, when it gets to that point, I think I'll retire.
Yeah, that's right. Then you got to worry about eyesight, then, don't you? So, probably it's a good segue into, obviously you're the brains of the company regarding. So what formal, you went off to college and you did some sort of electrical engineering or something similar, or?
Yes, graduated college, worked for some multinational corporations for 25 years. And when the dot-com technology bubble broke in 2002, I found myself unemployed.
Right.
So I went off and entered another career. I became a registered nurse, worked in hospitals.
Oh, wow.
But the electronics bug still was living inside of me and kept on growing and wanted an outlet. So I
Yeah.
started playing around with some designs I've had in my head for a number of years,
Yeah.
trying to improve on the older train technology.
Sure.
And that was 11 years ago, and this is where we are now.
Wow. Okay. So you sort of touched on my next sort of question. You started the business 11 years ago. Obviously, two-edged sword. You had to find employment, so to speak, or to get some money in, but also, obviously, you got quite a passion for the electronics. So that was a logical place to start, and you found, I'm assuming, some sort of niche within our larger hobby to make these electrical circuits. Would that be a fair sort of statement?
Yes, I started with two circuits, put some together, and took them to a train show, put them out on the table with a little layout to demonstrate how they work. And my wife thought I might sell maybe 3 of these overall. I said, no, we'll sell maybe 30.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, we didn't
Okay.
sell 30 at the show, but people did buy them. We went to a few more shows.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to have a website these days, and people
Sure.
started ordering. And it's grown gradually,
Yeah.
but it keeps growing.
Yeah, that's right. So I suppose the most resounding, because I'll bring up the one that I've used when it comes up. It's a little bit laggy today. So the infrared sensor obviously will cherry pick some of your circuits and your products here. So the one I use on my layout is the infrared, so the MRD1. So I use it I run a program called Train Controller, which is a German-based software, and I use it for almost what I call finite shunting, which will bring a train in over a KD electromagnet to do what they call the KD dance, to then couple the locomotive. So that's how I got to know your products. I've just got probably half a dozen of these little circuits at this point. I love them. So they're very robust, very good instructions, easy to install. But I think I think I've read somewhere in your website here, John, I think the beauty of it is you can add so much automatum post-wiring the rest of the layout, so to speak. So like in regards to, we'll talk about your signal controllers and the crossing signals and all that. All these circuits can be almost bolted on above the layout and not really interfere with other wiring, if that's the way you want to wire it, of your layout. And I think that's quite a novel way of doing it.
Well, that's the goal, is to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And everybody, all of us in this hobby know that a layout really is never finished.
Correct.
We're always in some stage of construction when we find out about a new product or get a new idea and we want to change things. And so the less rework you have to do, of course, the better.
Yeah, that's right.
So my goal from the beginning was to make it easy to install and to keep it independent of the track power. So
Sure.
you can use it with, like American Flyer or the old Lionel with AC track power, new digital technologies, or even now with battery on board, where the power is being carried by the train itself.
Yeah.
This all still works.
Yeah, that's right. So, as I said, I use the resounding thing. Obviously in your text here, you got no rail gaps required, because that's obviously probably another whole video podcast in itself, where you need to put that type of, cut the rails and the like, and also no modification to rolling stock. I've tried, because a lot of my current sensing modules can be a little bit finicky in regards to that. So to put resistors using resistor paint or otherwise on their resistor glue, or wire glue, is quite problematic. Even when you try to use the correct surface mount resistor. So it's quite a novel way, not novel, but quite a clever way, I should say, of moving forward to doing it. So now, probably would it be fair to say the entry level is where I've gone, the MRD1. So let's have a little talk about that, and I'll bring up some pictures of it. Where are we? Oops. So maybe if you just want to quickly chat about this circuit and other uses you might be able to use it for.
Sure. Well, what this does, this MRD1, is it uses infrared light source to detect when the train has arrived at a particular location at your layout.
Sure.
And what it does then is actually two things. One, it will light an LED for you. That's sort of an extra thing. But it has a relay on board, and it closes an electrical contact. So that's the same as if you push the push button switch when a train arrived at a particular location. So
sure.
I like to tell people, if you want to automate something on your layout, if that particular device or accessory can be activated with a push button, then you can activate it automatically with one of these little MRD1 circuits.
Sure. And I've got your PDF instructions up here, and there's obviously two ways you can install it. The way I've done it is the above board option, the baseboard that is. So quite relevant to speak of, to put it at a slight angle, which is obviously gives you better coverage, I suppose, that it can't slip between two wagons or a locomotive and a wagon. Obviously then the below the board. I've never tried that one, but I believe it's quite, it's obviously quite inintrusive. I've hidden my little IRs in either relay boxes or something similar, and I think I've seen on your website people hiding them in buildings and all sorts, so it's quite clever the way that works. So
right, two different ways that you could actually use. Two basic ways that we use light to sense an object. One is either the light reflects off of it, and so for instance when we look at something, we're seeing light being reflected off of that object. So that's the reflective sensing that the circuit's capable of doing. And the other is, for instance, if we see a shadow move by the ground, we know that an object came between the light source and us. So
sure.
That's the interrupting type sensing.
Yeah.
It's like when you walk through the door of a shop and they have an electric eye that rings a bell when you come in.
So some circuits, tell me if I'm wrong, they require some sort of ambient light to work. My understanding is yours, you can work in perfect darkness. Is that correct?
Right. Two different ways using light to sense. The older way is to use what were called photo cells or CDS cells, and they require some external light source, whether it's the room light or whatever.
Sure.
And they change resistance when a shadow comes across that sensor. With infrared, we have two pieces there. One is the light source, and the other is the light receiver. So it has its own source built in, so it's not depending on room light. You can use it when the room's fully lit, when the room's dark, or somewhere in between.
Sure.
If you're doing dusk scenes, or like if you have a modular layout that you take to different places, every venue has different lighting levels.
Sure.
And so the annoying thing about the older technology was that you always had to adjust for the ambient lighting.
Sure.
Infrared uses its own light source, and so that takes care of that problem.
Yeah, lovely. So next we got here, obviously you got the dual infrared detector, which I've got up on the screen, if you can see that. Now,
yes.
So I picture tells 1,000 words here, obviously, And over on the right-hand side here, if people can see, there's obviously a little video which we won't play at this point in time, where obviously someone has flipped a switch when a train's been coming through a given location and hence either collided or derailed the train. So obviously talk us through, because you sort of talk about automatic turnout control, non-derailing switch control. So can you talk us through a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm sure we've all experienced the embarrassment of running our trains, particularly when visitors are over and admiring our layout, and we forget to throw one of the turnouts as the train comes along, and sure enough, we derail the train. And
yes, I have been there.
So, this is the 2000s. We have the technology. We can automate that. So by using two infrared sensor sets, one on each of the tracks coming into the turnout, when the train is sensed by that sensor, it throws the turnout to line up with the train. So pretty simple. Here we have, it shows two trains coming. The first one gets the turnout line for it.
Sure.
The second one has to wait until the first one goes through, and then the circuit will throw the turnout again to get the second one going.
Sure. And could you use that same circuit to then link in with the signaling system within on the layout as well, or was that be sort of another module, so to speak, to control a signal, or a very basic signal, I suppose?
A real simple signal can be hooked up to this, like typically red and green, or red and green, yellow and green light.
Sure.
It does have a couple of relay contacts on board that change when the switch position changes, so that can be used for controlling lights or routing power to the two different tracks. Other applications.
Yeah, where are we? I like how each little page, when you dive deeper and deeper into your website, and it's quite clever that you almost put like a little anecdote at the top of it. So this obviously talks about crossing signals and rightfully says, where do we most likely to see trains, even from a young age, obviously, it's at a crossing. So, and then you sort of tell further, dig deeper into the story about, then people then obviously will connect with crossing signals. So I've yet to install any on my layout, but I will be using these circuits because I think that's just the easiest way of doing it. So sort of, can you walk us through, and I will show the little video up on Facebook how it works. I think it's quite pointless.
Sure.
So if you just want to have a quick chat about that.
Again, we're using the infrared sensors. We put them along the track that leads up to the crossing. And as the system senses a train approaching, it starts to flash the lights. We'll see that here, I think, in a second.
Yep, so the lights have just started going. Yep.
Yeah, so I've put a few things in there. I looked at what was already available in the market, and I thought, well, I'd like something a little more sophisticated. So for instance, if trains are approaching and they stop and back up, the system is able to adjust for that, depending on how many sensors you decide to install. It flashes the lights and makes them fade in and out, so they look like the old incandescent bulbs in the older style of signals.
Lovely.
And also there's a contact on there so you can activate another accessory, such as, in this case, the brake lights in the automobile.
Oh, wow.
I mean, after all, we're supposed to stop when the train's coming, so.
Correct.
Here we're modeling safety in miniature.
You've thought of everything. And, for the price point that is of $66, that's pretty good, I think.
Well, it's a good thing I have other income.
Yeah. So what we'll look at doing now, reversing tracks. So I posed a question. Obviously, you do reverse loop modules. So that's obviously, let me scroll up a little bit, reverse loop in its basic form. Now, I suppose the question I've got is, I posed a question up on Facebook the other day, and a lot of people, I said, what's your pain point regarding DCC? So, and a lot of people came back identifying reverse loops within a more complicated layout diagram. So obviously the diagrams you got here is the classic reverse loop, which is easy to identify. So is there any little
Right.
tidbits or tricks that you could sort of elaborate on to when you look at a track plan? I'm not sort of like a bowl of spaghetti here, what you might look at to say, okay, this might be where a reverse loop is required, I suppose.
Well, yeah, the reverse loop happens when you have a continuous path along the rails from one side to the other. So,
Sure.
if it goes all the way around, that allows the electric current from your power pack to go around the rails and come straight back before it did any work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's called a short circuit.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
To
So,
avoid. Yeah.
as far as identifying a loop, obviously here this is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Um, if there's any way that your train can be traveling down the track and all of a sudden after it goes through several places it's going now the opposite direction on that same track, you have a reverse loop someplace.
Sure.
When people have emailed me track diagrams that exactly like what you said, look like
Yeah.
a bowl of spaghetti,
Yeah.
you start to unravel it, to unwind the pretzel, so to speak.
Yeah.
Take out miscellaneous sidings, passing tracks, things like that,
Yeah.
until you get the basics of where the main line is.
Sure.
And after you've unfolded it a few times, then you can start to see, oh, this is a place where something can turn around and go back the other way.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you have to isolate it.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Keep it
No, that's good
electrically
advice.
separate from the rest of the layout.
I know I ended up getting an old wagon because it's one of the things I can look at a track plan if it's a sort of a more basic setup where I think, okay, that's very obvious where that reverse loop is. However, I got an old wagon and I got a red and a black texture, and sometimes because I've got quite a large layout, it serves two purposes for me. So I always keep the same wiring convention all the way through. So I'll literally put a wagon on the track with the red facing me, so the red is obviously facing, and then obviously red black as we go through. But that has also helped me a few times to sort of find reversing loops on my layout. So it's that's one little trick that I learned from another modeler here in Australia. So
it's a good idea. We all need these sort of tricks to help us get through all this.
yeah, it's you'd be surprised. I'm very visual, so you'll be surprised. Like you got this little wagon sitting in front of you that's got red facing towards you. You know, the front rail as you are standing at the aisle side or wherever which way you're doing your wiring. It makes it a lot easier. So, and it's saved my bacon a few times. So.
Well, mile railroading is a wonderful hobby in that it provides so many learning opportunities. And, the obvious ones are things like carpentry and electricity and learning to use power tools. But I think a very important life skill is learning how to deal with frustration. Those of us with any kind of constructive hobby, whether it's airplanes or trains or whatever, we've all had run into problems, things break or did not work as we expected. And we have to find a way around it and to find a solution and make it work.
Sure.
I think there's so many people, particularly this week out there, with all kinds of problems because they never learned how to deal with frustration.
Sure.
How to deal with it constructively.
Yeah, that's right. So the next one we might look at is obviously you make some. Obviously, we'll probably be that order here. We've done the reversing loops. Now, I'll say like the infrared. So you sell quite a number of signals, gantries, crossing, sort of, grade crossings, I think you call them in the United States. So we might have a quick look at some of those. So that's something you manufacture yourself as well, is that correct? Or
no, I have no idea how people make such wonderful signals.
Yeah, that is lovely.
I found some good suppliers, and we were a retailer for those.
Yeah.
It wasn't my intention. It was not my intention originally to get in on that side of the business because there's such a variety, all different scales. But people would come to us. They would say, they would like the system as it operates and how
Yeah.
much for the whole thing and what do I need to buy. And I said,
Sure.
well, I sell the electronics. You have to go somewhere else to buy the signals.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they would walk away disappointed. And of course, I was disappointed also.
Yeah. Okay.
So to be a one-stop shop, so to speak, make it convenient for people to buy things and
Sure.
just show everybody what's available.
Yeah. Okay.
It gradually increased what we carry.
Yeah. So they come in 3 different scales.
S scale, N scale,
Scale,
HO, and
HO.
both. So actually,
Okay.
there's some signals available in all 4
Yeah.
scales.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. And those are. Sorry, I've just brought up the grade crossing with the boom. That's sort of obviously quite indicative to what's out in the US that I remember. They could pretty well be put onto just about any American-based layout or Australian-based layout for that matter, because we've got very similar grade crossings here in Australia as well. I think the only difference I can see, maybe besides the shape, maybe is our lights are. Pretty sure our lights are underneath the boom arm, not on top. But I'm sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, okay.
And the boom arm typically is hinged on the opposite side of the signal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we have actually quite a number of customers in Australia and New Zealand.
Sure. All right. So we got was showing a little video here. Obviously, this is the crossing circuit again, but just showing those boom arms working or the grade crossing arms working. So this is the layout that you spoke of on the emails. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a 6 by 2.5 foot layout. It's in 2 parts that we take to train shows.
Yep. Yeah. No, that'd be fantastic. So we're a little bit starved for a lot of, we've got a few bigger model railway exhibitions, I suppose, in Australia. We've got one here, but obviously with the current climate, that everything's been cancelled at this part of the world. So we're talking about block signals and the like as well. So some of them are just gorgeous as well. So they come in different scales, I should say. I was going to say gauge, but that's track, but scales to obviously complement your electronics and the like. So another thing it's sort of when I was researching the website, I found was obviously you got various different exhibit controllers using the IR set with the controller. So sort of you talk us how a modeler might, if they're not an exhibition modeler, how they might use something like this, I suppose, on their layouts.
Well, a lot of times you want to have a train that moves by itself rather than just going round and round continuously. You might want it to go back and forth on a straight track.
Sure.
And there have been systems out there that do that, of course. And until a customer came along one day and asked me, well, what if we put a turnout, a track switch on there so that 2 trains can take turns going back and forth? Can you do that?
Sure.
And I said, well, sure, I'll think about that. So we did, and the basic track form looks sort of like a pickle fork, if you know what that is.
Yeah, yeah.
2-pronged fork, so that's why I call it the Pickle Fork Railroad.
Sure. I think we've got a video on that, so I'll quickly just play that. It goes for a little bit.
Yeah,
so just keep talking how obviously we've got Pickle Fork. It's one straight stretch of track, and it's got a left-hand point one end and a right-hand point the other, and it just toggles backwards and forwards. There's with some lovely little trams you've got there. So
right. So the Pickle Fork, actually, we call that one the double-ended. And of course, the track doesn't have to be straight. It can twist around wherever you want it to go. But the idea is it has 2 switches, so a total of 4 endpoints. And so then you can have actually up to 3 different trains or trolleys going back and forth. So it could be on an automated exhibit of some kind in a store or restaurant, or just in your home. Or it could be part of a regular layout. You just have trains going back and forth in the background.
I think that's what I think that's what I would probably use it for on mine. I've got I'm building a harbour scene where I think I'd like some tramway sort of coming from a main station to Harbourside. I think that would be quite a neat little way of going about it.
So I like to say that all my good ideas for products actually came from customers,
Yeah,
which is one reason why I like to go to train shows, is because I
yeah,
get to talk to a lot of model railroaders, and I get some really good ideas from them.
yeah. Well, that's right. I suppose that's hence one of the reasons, because I'm sort of looking at the DCC side of things, putting something together for that. But you, you're exactly right. If you go and talk out there to the modeler, you sort of what they call their pain points, I suppose, or what they really want, and then you go forward and okay, there's now going to be a market for that, and it's quite an interesting sort of process to go down and talk to these people exactly what they want, and what they want in a product and what they expect. I suppose it's
It is, and you get some hits and you get some misses. You never
yeah,
know
that's right.
what's going to be the next big thing and what's going to be the next big loser.
Yeah, that's right. So what what is the next project on your workbench? I suppose what are you looking at releasing next, or R&D, I suppose, research and development phase?
Oh, the first things to come along are just added features to our latest signal circuits. Of course, once you build something and you think you've put in all the features somebody could want, well, now they say, hey, well, can you also do this? Can you also do that? And
Sure.
it's actually it seems annoying sort of, but it's part of the challenge of why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So that'll be the next thing, and then some other signaling circuits for turnout indications, and then who knows?
Sure.
As soon as we get to go to another train show, I'm sure someone will have another idea for me.
Yeah, that's right. So I suppose what's also regarding your personal model railroading. Obviously, you got your layout. That you obviously got all your circuits and the like on that to display your circuit, your wares and the like. But do you have a bigger layout that you're looking at doing, or you're just purely interested in making the circuits and the electronic side of things, and that layout serves your purpose for your hobby, or modeling, I should say?
Well, we do have an HO scale layout in our basement. It's been totally neglected ever since I started Azatrax,
Sure.
which was about the same time our children were in high school, and so they were moving off to other pursuits, other interests, and I was also changing careers. That took a lot of time. I look at it and say, gee, I'd really like to get this going again, but
Yeah.
there's only so many hours in a day, and
That's right.
this activity here certainly provides me with challenges, and so I'm satisfied with that
Yeah.
for now. We do break out the American flyer around Christmas. It goes
Oh,
around the
lovely.
Christmas tree.
Yeah. And why wouldn't you?
My wife just retired, but she has been a violin teacher.
Sure.
Gave private lessons at our home, and always had Christmas parties for her students.
Right.
And we always had the train set up, and all the kids could run the train. They just had a blast doing that. Many of them had never seen an electric train before.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Which is very interesting, because that's it. The whole model railroading fraternity right now is sort of blowing my mind a little bit. I've just recently, last year, got into YouTube, and I've just got into probably doing a little bit of. You there, John?
Yes, I'm still here. I think
right.
you disappeared for a little bit.
Yeah. So the whole modeling fraternity has sort of blown my mind a little bit. With who would have thought? I've reached out to someone like yourself in Colorado, chatting about model trains across the world and then we'll put this out on YouTube, and people will watch it and buy your products, hopefully. So, or more products, I should say. It's just the whole concept right now is just, from the world we're sort of living in, that sort of the community that's going along with it. It's quite astounding where this is going.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, now, is there anything else you wanted, other products you wanted to bring up here? That's sort of I sort of just cherry picked a few. Is there sort of any other ones that you wanted to have a quick look at? I think we were gonna. Sorry, I think we were gonna show your new product, weren't we? The T5.
TS5, yes.
TS5. That's it.
There we go, that page.
So, now let me get that across to. There we go.
This one is by far the most complex circuit that we have. It was quite a challenge to put it together. It took working on it off and on about 1.5 years. And so just released it a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
I've had some early units sent out to some what we call beta testers.
Sure.
Installed it on their layouts and told me the problems they were having with it. So we got that taken care of, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
What it does is, we've had circuits for automating a block signal on a single track, which is pretty basic. Train goes by and signal turns red as it continues down the track, then it changes to yellow and then eventually green.
Yeah.
Of course, people come along and say, "Oh, I don't have just a straight track, plain track. I have turnouts."
Sure.
How do you deal with signals there? And so
Yeah.
we came up with a TS3 for a 3-signal circuit where there's one turnout. And I have a dual track with crossovers. How do we deal with signals there?
Yeah, okay.
And that's what the TS5 does.
Yeah.
Is all this signaling, which can actually get rather complex.
Yeah. I can
And all
imagine.
the train sensing is done with only 4 of those infrared sensor sets on those 2 tracks. If there's a branch circuit, a 5th track, that requires a 5th sensor set. But it does all the signaling, and I've tried to keep it. It's pretty much prototypical to North American railroad practice.
Sure.
There are quite a few differences between railroads. Some of the different signaling aspects. So, if you're modeling a particular railroad and you want the signals to be quite faithful to that railroad, contact me and we can probably work out some custom aspects for you. But what it does is it senses the trains coming into and out of that control point where the turnouts are.
Sure.
You also need some electrical contacts tied into your turnouts so it
Right.
knows which way the turnouts are set.
Yeah. Okay.
Some switch machines have that contact built in.
Yeah.
Others, you need to add a relay or some other device to that.
Okay. I'm assuming
But that's all it needs,
the
plus a
tortoise
power supply.
the tortoise switch machine has that though, doesn't it? So
Right, Tortoise, Cobalt, and several others.
yeah. Okay. Because I started out with Cobalt and they started failing a little bit for some reason, so I've just switched back over to Tortoise. They're a little bit bigger, but I've never had a problem with them, even full DCC that I run mine with. So they're a great little machine, that's for sure.
Yeah, very sturdy, very reliable.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so John, I think we'll call it a night there, or a night for you, morning for me. So, as I said, I'm indebted. Thank you very much for taking time away from your family in this crazy world that we're living in right now to walk through some of your products, tell us how they work, and answer some of my silly questions about reversing loop switches. Now made a little bit clearer to me as well, which is great. So it's a great little website, www.azatrax.com. There's AZATRAX, and also find John on Facebook. He personally has answered numerous of my emails. You probably can't remember, John, but a few years ago when I started using your single IR little modules, the MRD1 I think it was, sort of showed how to hook them up to external DCC accessory decoders and the like. So he is a wealth of knowledge, so I thank you very much for what you're doing for our hobby, and keep developing these wonderful products.
Well, thank you, Darren. Thanks for putting on these podcasts.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Very helpful.
A lot of fun.
Thank you again.
Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Technique.